Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
All right, welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. And if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do for a living.
Hey Dan, this is Osmar Mansoor. I'm a native of the Bay Area in California, and I'm currently actually working on my own startup. In the past, I was at at some big companies and some startups in the tech industry. Yeah.
Awesome. So can you just tell me more about, what your startup's called and what the idea is behind it, and also just, I guess like the story of how you got started with it.
Yeah. So some things I observed like as a developer and as a manager. At startups and big companies is like when I was a developer, I was like, well, sometimes I would have a lot of meetings and kind of distractions throughout the day, and you'd wonder like what you actually did, right? So I thought I had the idea to like actually have like what if I could have a playback, almost like a Twitch playback of my own coding throughout the day, right? Or week, whatever, and also capture some of the experimental code that I did. Sometimes you write code and you're like, oh, I wrote this thing, a while back, but I didn't check it in, but I wish I could go back and get it, right? So that's kind of how it started off. And so it's kind of like, a time machine, right? For code. It doesn't really rely on GitHub or anything like that. And so that was the original kind of pain point. And then there's also like, well, what we're kind of been more recently doing is exploring it for teams. Like, okay, well, how can this, does this make sense? And how can this work for teams? Like, let's say if I could view a playback of someone's pull request, things like that. So yeah, that's pretty much how it started. And I got some encouragement from a senior engineer at Apple at the time, and then it was about 10 years ago. And of course, I did nothing with that. And then later on, I realized, wow, this is this technology, I guess, can be used to solve some team pain points. So that's when I got started years back. Yeah.
So when did you launch the company?
This was officially it was around 3 years ago, but I was just not really spending that much time on it. And now more like I guess in the past year and a half, I'd say that's when we actually got a team together and started spending more time on it and whatnot.
Makes sense. So I guess like let's just dive deeper here. So without mentioning obviously a customer name, but can you just give an example of a customer use case, like how many of your customers are using you guys today?
Yeah, so it's over 1,500 right now, and a lot of them are actually like just individual developers. So there's a few companies that are using it with their own teams. Yeah.
So 1,500 developers, and I guess like what is it? So they pay like a certain amount per month, like subscription, like what does that look like?
Yeah, freemium model. Yeah, so it's like developers, it's free, up to a certain point, you can get, a certain number of repos and whatnot, like private repos. We're kind of modeling it similar to how GitHub was initially,
Right.
Yeah.
But I guess like out of those 1,500, like how many of those are paid?
Yeah, there's just there's not that many that are paid right now. So because we're still kind of figuring out like what the limits are. So we recently kind of changed that, recently adjusted our pricing and
Right.
our payment methods. So now you can get like, 30-day free trial. Yeah. Before, so you could try it out. So try out the pro plan for 30 days. So, a few of the free trial people have signed up for that. But yeah, actually what we're kind of more interested in is actually like teams and kind of the B2B like businesses,
So you're saying, yeah, because I mean, like from that standpoint, would they be paying per seat, or like what's the model for a company?
Exactly. Yeah. Per seat. Yep.
So I guess like, right, you said that you have 1,500, most of them are not paying, but are you gonna have to convert? Like, are you gonna say, hey, listen, like even though they signed up initially, it was like a free plan. Are you gonna, I guess, force them to get behind a paywall, or are those people locked in and they don't have to ever pay? Like, what is your plan with those? I guess like most of your customers today who aren't paying.
Yeah, I think that's sort of the challenge, right? Is like, we still want to have like this freemium model, right? Like,
Right.
again, it's similar to GitHub. I think like around 10 years ago, GitHub was like, okay, everyone is, you're free, but then after a certain number of private repos, or storage limit, then you have to pay, right? So, because of course, if you have free users, that allows them to try it out for a little bit longer, see if there's value in it. So yeah, I don't want to necessarily give that up. I think the challenge is figuring out what makes sense to charge people for the value that we're bringing, right?
For
And
sure.
and how can we deliver more of that value, basically?
Right. So I guess so you mentioned GitHub a couple times. So I guess if someone, would they be using you instead of GitHub? Or I guess like what's the advantage, of your platform versus GitHub for someone who's not sure which one to use?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So we're not a replacement for GitHub. We're more like complement GitHub, right? So
Right.
the idea is that we don't rely on commits, on we do sort of integrate with Git, right? So like we recognize like if you're on a branch, right, then we're like, okay, you're on this branch, you're streaming from that branch, okay, switch that branch, okay, switch that branch, right? Because we need to know for the purpose of streaming. But yeah, I mean, yeah, so it's not meant to replace GitHub. I mean, like maybe in the long term, like 10, 15-year future, you
Right.
could see how the idea of streaming could replace, the manual actions of Git that people have to do. But then of course that also raises concerns. It could potentially raise concerns, right, about like privacy, security, things like that. Like, okay, what if I don't want to what if I want to block out this window of time without streaming because I accidentally pasted in my API key or something like that, right, when I was just testing and stuff like that. So
Right.
so yeah, there's kind of those kinds of questions. Like that's maybe much more a long-term thing, but for now it's like you integrate with GitHub, so you can actually we're launching a tool that you can see the playback of a pull request within GitHub itself
Right.
with the intention that you can actually understand. It's not just like a diff of like plus and minuses lines of code. You can actually understand the thought process of the developer by viewing that playback, and then hopefully reduce the amount of time that it takes to actually comprehend what's going on and things like that. So
For sure. So obviously, having 1,500 users is pretty impressive. So how did you get all these signups and, have all these PM people using your platform in the last 3 years?
So to be honest, it's mostly been through like social media. We used to actually be a lot more active on social media, but we're hoping to get that started again early next year, which is like in a week. But you know, yeah, mostly just been like that, right? Like word of mouth, social media. We spent like a little bit on Google AdWords. I think we were spending like $1 a day
Okay.
for the past several months. But
Right.
then but now that we've got our pricing figured out, like so now we're actually going to start spending more money, maybe like $30 a day or something like that, which is still for how much that startup spend on Google ads. Like we're fully bootstrapped, so we don't have millions of dollars just burn on that. I've been at startups in the past where it's like people spent like $2 million on Google ad campaigns that got nothing back. So it's
Correct.
right.
Well, I guess I'm curious, right? Because you mentioned social media. So when you say social media, like which platforms did you use and which ones are you planning on ramping up next year?
Yeah, so we used LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, but those are so Twitter and Instagram. I mean, they're all pretty much like inactive right now, right? So since
Right.
we're actually working on like a redesign that we launched a few months back, so
Right.
yeah, and then I think once we launch this pull request feature, that's something that like a lot of engineering managers told us that they would really want to have. So that's when we want to like kind of go public and announce it and things like that, and start
Right.
up those efforts again. Yeah.
Right. So just to be clear, like you mentioned that you got the pricing down and you have like the freemium model, so 30 free days. So if I'm going to sign up after 30 days, like how much are you charging per month for one seat?
For an individual, it's $10 a month, or
Okay.
5, right? For a team, it's 15 a month.
So it's
15 per
15 a month, 15 a month for how many seats?
per seat.
15 a, but does a team get more features than like an individual would?
Yeah, so you get so just this team features, right? So you can get like just the ability to you can actually just have like your entire org structure. Again like similar to GitHub, right? You can have like an org, a team, and the team can have other teams, right? So and then you have like the permissions as well, so like admin and developer and whatnot, and outside collaborators and things like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So, like obviously now, as you just mentioned, that we're about to go into the new year. So, for next year to be successful, if we, talk, again in one year, where do like how many users do you want to have? And I guess like when I say, I mean, paid users paying this between $10 to $15 a month?
Yeah. You asked by the end of next year?
Yeah, like what's the vision for the end of 2024? Like what's your goal? Like how many paid users like do you guys want to have to be successful or to make it successful for next year?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the goal is to have about 10,000 by the end of next year. Of course, that is pretty aggressive, but we're also have been looking into other types of customers as well. So, I mentioned like businesses, but there's also like boot camps. So we think that there's going to be a lot of interest from like boot camp instructors that, like their students don't know Git, right?
Right.
So they have no idea what the students are doing, right? And they don't know how they got to that solution. Do they, I don't know, what if they just use ChatGPT or something like that, right? Or they don't actually understand something and they got help from a friend, right? But the thing is, you just kind of know, like, yeah, what the students are actually, what their thought process is. So I think this could be a big hit with that. Yeah, but that's that's something else. We're also gonna bring on another co-founder as well. So yeah.
So in terms of getting in front of boot camps, right? Like, are you looking at more partnerships, or I guess like what are you looking at to, like how are you going to get in front of these boot camp instructors?
Yeah, we're thinking of just we're going to build relationships with the leadership of these boot camps, right? So the owners and managers and things like that, and then use that to introduce it to the instructors, right? At the end of the day, it's all about whether the instructors would find value in this thing, and then give them a free trial for let's say 3 months, whatever it is, and if it delivers value, within 3 months, then it'll be obvious, right? And if not, then okay, well then hopefully we got some feedback, right?
Right. So essentially like a cold message on X or LinkedIn into bootcamp instructor saying, hey, listen, check out this platform. Your students would love it. We'll give you guys a free trial for a few months. And if they like it, then they would just, ideally come back and keep working with you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We have some contacts with people who own boot camps. So yeah, for the most part, like the bigger ones, those would be cold messages and or figuring out like if we can get a warm intro or something like that.
For
Yeah.
sure. So, what would you say is like the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew before you started this company?
Oh yeah, there's so yeah, there's so many. The first piece of advice is like actually hire a professional designer. So we're fully bootstrapped and I wanted to save as much money as I could. So I was like, you know what, I'll just use my own sense of design for how we're going to build this thing. So I think like I did the best that I could, but as like a back end engineer, it's not going to be great, So I wish I just spent like an extra, on Fiverr, right? You can hire a really good designer for like 5,000, 7,000 bucks, right? But that's actually going to save you tons of time and effort in just like, yeah, in doing it yourself and having to redo the whole front end and all this stuff. So yeah, I mean that's one thing. Like just plunk the money down, get a professional designer. Don't try to wing it, because people really do care about that. Design, UI, UX. The second thing is like on hiring. Like initially, I was trying to go with like part-time people and stuff like that, and kind of just doing like hiring part-time folks, right? But like they have their own jobs, right? But they're doing this kind of on the side. But other than that really doesn't work because it's such a challenge to get them to, anyone, it would be in the same situation, right? Like getting them to prioritize this work, right? So yeah, I would just hire like a full-time person from the get-go, right? And also just like not hiring too fast as well. You just want to make sure you can kind of be steady and kind of ensure that you build trust with the existing team before bringing on new folks. Yeah, I mean so that, I mean, all our team is overseas, the dev team at least, right? So
Which
that's
country?
in Pakistan.
Okay, yeah, like my team's in Pakistan too. Like my co-founder's there, so
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Small world. Yeah. Yeah. And
awesome.
there's one, we have one guy in the Philippines. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, like, and optimize if you're hiring people overseas, right? Because everything's remote, right? And, there's basically no accountability. So it's like you want to optimize for trust, which
For
is
sure.
really, really hard to do, actually. So, I mean, I don't know if I have any advice on that, but then that's on how to actually do that. But then, this is, of course, going to be more of an issue with hiring directly, right? Like if you go through a consultancy firm, you can like, yeah, you can, the trust is there because those consultancy firms, right? The software houses, as they call them, like keylog. A lot of them have keyloggers on the developer machines. Like
Right.
they know, like their developers are in the office 9 to 5. There's no way that they're going to be juggling like multiple clients or anything like that, right?
For sure.
Yeah, but of course you pay tons of premium on top of that, right? And if you have if you had like a couple of million in funding or something, then sure, why not? But if you're bootstrapped, then that you won't be able to do that.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, it can definitely be difficult. I think, as you said, right, being bootstrapped, you're always looking for different ways to iterate. So, if somebody watching this wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your company website or social media handles? I guess best ways to get in contact with you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, yeah. I'll share that.
Well, if you mind, if you can just tell us, here
Oh,
that
okay.
way.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. It's CodeSync. That's a code sync.com. Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
And then CodeSync on Instagram and Twitter as well, and LinkedIn.
Yeah, CodeSync app on Twitter, but yeah, CodeSync as well. Yeah, on LinkedIn and Instagram. Yep.
Awesome. Osmar, thank you so much for your time, and we're rooting for you. Hopefully, you guys reach your goal and then some in 2024.
Yeah, thanks so much, Dan. It's great talking to you.
Thanks. Likewise. All right. Bye.
Bye.